Hey everybody, Ben with Kryptonite here. We brought our brand new 2025 Pro R to Alpine Designs right here in Diamond Springs, California. Had them do a lot of cool stuff to it and also put some Kryptonite parts on there. This is Chris. A lot of this came from his head. So tell me what's going on with this car in the mission statement.
So our main goal with this build was to create a desert-driven Pro R that is super reliable. One of the big things partnering with Kryptonite Products is getting tons of beefy, reliable parts on this car so we can put tons of miles and not have to have any worries about breakdowns or anything along the way.
Yeah, this car is going to spend a lot of time in the desert, Nevada, getting way out there, so I want to make sure this thing's tough, it's going to be reliable, and it goes fast, because going fast is fun, and you don't buy a Pro R because it's slow, okay? So, first things first, let's talk about the front end. Everybody wants to know about wheels and tires. Tell me about the wheels and tires.
So we started with partnering up with Battleborn Off-Road in Nevada. They were able to create this wheel one-off for us. They start off with a forged blank, sent it off and had it CNC machined, and they coated it with a gloss black finish and then came back and did some machine work to give it a nice pop with the billet look and the gloss black to tie into the car.
Very nice looking, very sharp wheel and tire combo. We're going to talk about the front end suspension on this car real quick. We've got a lot of Kryptonite goodies on there. We've got our shock forks, we've got our ball joints, we've got our tie rods, we've got our sway bar end links, and we've got our bearings on the front. This thing is bomb proof. One of my favorite things on there, we did the shock forks. So tell me what's going on with shock forks on these cars.
So the big problem when these cars first came out was the shock forks. The way that it's designed, the shock fork would actually fail. If you had a ball joint fail, it would put a torsional load on the shock shaft going into the fork, and it would actually cause the front end to come apart, causing other part failures and issues along the way.
Yeah, a failure like that is no fun. That's the end of the day. Do not pass go. Go home if you can make it home. Other parts on the front of this car, we've got our tie rods on there. Now, I know the stock tie rods on here are super, really big and beefy, right?
Not really. They're lacking in a few areas. So one of the main things that we did is adding the Kryptonite tie rod kit. The inner joints actually use a Heim joint, which is much stronger. The rod itself is an 1 1/8" hex aluminum. So everything from the rack all the way out to the tire is a lot stronger.
Now, is there any sort of limit on travel on those tie rods?
Nope, it matches or exceeds the travel limits of the factory stuff and is much stronger along with it.
So we've also got our ball joints on this car, and there's a couple key features that we've done to change where the stock ball joints leave off. I know that there's a clip that's an issue. Can you tell me more about that?
Correct. So the stock ball joints had a big problem with the clips. The way that they're designed, you're putting all the load of the car and the spring weight on that clip all day long as you're out in the desert riding. So one of the things that Kryptonite's done is gone through and actually used a threaded ball joint design, and it also allows for it to be pressed in, which allows it to be nice and tight. That set nut will actually go in there and secure the ball joint properly in the arm, and it's something that can be done out in the field, which is really nice too.
Yeah, field repairs are monumental, especially when you're out in northern Nevada like we're doing, going fast, in the sand, good times. So with these new cars, they are getting heavier and heavier throughout the years. However, it seems like Polaris isn't really upgrading the ball joints to handle that. And once you start adding in things like a cage and bigger wheels and tires, you start finding wear points where they maybe wouldn't be before. So we've done a couple of different things to help that. A, they're greasable, that's huge. You've got a serviceable boot. And what about the install on this?
So the install is much easier on the Kryptonite ball joints. They do still have a slight press to get them into the arm, but it makes it a lot easier to service them or replace them out in the desert or on the trail if you need to. Instead of that clip that's going to fail on you, you have a retainer nut that is actually torqued down and is incorporated into the boot. So if you do rip a boot, a stick comes up and hits the boot, you're actually able to remove all that and replace it rather than having to get rid of the joint completely and replace it.
We've also got our wheel bearings on here, which are really hot rod, very nice. Tell me more about those.
So the big thing with these, it's a much bigger wheel flange, thicker wheel flange, and you're gonna have a much stronger wheel stud that comes on these too. So they're already pre-assembled, loaded, no service needed. Bolt them in the car, torque them down, and you're good to go.
So these Pro Rs, they do have bigger sway bars in stock, and that translates a little bit to racing. Can you tell me more about the sway bars on this?
Correct. So with some of the older model cars, there was a lot more body roll and body lean with the Pro R models and some of the Turbo R models. They actually went ahead and from factory beefed a lot of that up. Does put more stress on some of your pivot points for the sway bar mounts and links. So one of the things we did was put some of the Kryptonite sway bar end links on there, which gives you a nice solid link between your sway bar and your lower arm. Gives you a uniball joint instead of just a cheap factory joint, which will give you a lot more life.
One of the great things about Kryptonite Products is not only are they made right here in the USA, but they have a lifetime warranty. So all those parts we're talking about here, everything that has to do with Kryptonite, all has a lifetime warranty, which is going to give you good peace of mind and make sure you're getting what you pay for, because again, they're made right here in the United States. So we've got a lot of front end parts in this car. We've got bigger wheels and tires. Did we leave the shocks alone, or did we make them cool?
We didn't. We couldn't leave the shocks alone. These cars, just like everything else, have come leaps and bounds from some of the older Polaris models, but there was room for improvement. With this, we went to our friends over at MTS Suspension. They set us up with a full valving kit, dual rate springs. We're able to install everything here in-house and tune properly to fit this driver's needs and the way he uses this car.
So now that we've wrapped up the suspension on the front end, we've got a lot of other stuff going on here. Tell me what's going on with this.
So one of the big things we did on this car that's kind of a visual is all the Baja Designs lights. There's tons of light on the front of this car, all the way from ground level with the amber lights on the front bumper, moving up to the LP4 A-pillar lights, and wrapping it up on top with a 40-inch light bar tucked into our light bar pocket. So tons of light on this car, give us some of that high-speed night driving fun.
So you may be asking yourself, why ambers? Why do we have it on there? Tell me more about that, Chris.
So the amber is really good for that long day of riding when you're coming home, headed back to camp, and you have a little bit of light coming through still from the sun. But you have a ton of dust. That amber will actually cut through the dust, and we put them down low to keep that light under the dust and really pick up some of those shadows so that you have a nice clear view.
Also, fun fact, amber lights cause less fatigue on your eyes. It means if you're tired at the end of the day, amber lights help you see better. So let's not talk about that light on the roof there. You kind of glanced over it, but it's pretty trick. Tell me what you did there.
Yeah, so what we did, we didn't just want to stick a light bar on top of this thing. So with that, we did do a little bit of custom fab, and we added on a completely one-off aluminum roof scoop that kind of encompasses the front light bar and also pockets in the rear light bar. It gives it a nice smooth look, and then we went ahead and planted a Starlink flush to the top of it on the inside, so we have Wi-Fi out in the middle of nowhere.
That's right, Starlink on a Razor. So also on the front of our Pro R, we've got a winch. Now that's going to help us get out of some sticky situations. What do we have tucked back there?
So we have a factory Polaris winch. It's a 6,000 pound rated winch, and it's actually a 2-speed winch so that you don't have to access it to be able to spool it out quick or spool it in fast, so that you can get your recovery handled as quick as possible.
And it looks like there's some protection around there. We got a bumper on it. What's going on there?
With a SDR bumper, it has a nice clean fair lead. It's more of their pre-runner style desert bumper, and it gives us a nice spot to mount those Baja Designs amber lights.
Now, lastly, the windshield. Now, windshields are always a hot topic with side-by-side guys. Tell me what you did with the windshield on this.
Correct. So with all of our windshields, we like to make a removable bottom panel. So if you're riding in the summer, you want to keep the wind off of you, but you don't want to, completely take the windshield off. You can remove the bottom panel. It gives you some airflow, keep you cool. And in the winter, you can go opposite, put the bottom panel on, completely block off all the wind. And actually on this car, we did something a little bit even more custom. We did wing windows on the side for the summer. You can crank those open and really get some airflow into the car.
Nice. I like the wing windows. That's really cool. So now I want to talk about the cage on here. The stock cages on Pro Rs leave a lot to be desired. You went pretty cuckoo on this thing. Let's talk about the cage.
We definitely changed the overall look of this car. The cage is one of the biggest things that you can change on these to really give it a low profile look and also give it a ton of extra strength. If, God forbid, you do put this car on its side or on its lid, tons of strength in this cage. You don't have to worry about safety for sure. One of the big things with it is some of our styling with the bulkheads in the rear. We fully fabricate this cage one off by hand, and that allows us to do some of the custom features like the roof scoop. We also added the intrusion bars in the front window for kind of that racy feel and look, and then gave it some extra flair to match up with the 2025 model plastics and overall design flow on the car.
So over here with our cool rock lights, you can actually see the MTS shocks on there. Now these aren't stock. What have you done with them?
So being that we are a certified MTS dealer, we have the ability to actually valve and custom tune these shocks here in the shop. So being that this car has extra weight and we're actually able to spring it properly and valve it properly for the specific driving out in the desert that this customer is going to be doing, gives you much better ride quality, keeps you from bottoming out, and for those long days out in the desert, really saves your back.
So these MTS shocks also have our shock forks on there. And with these shocks, you have found that they break right where the threads hit the shaft, right? So we have our shock fork that encompasses that and the cup as well.
Correct. Yeah, it's definitely a nice product to be able to add to our service as far as the shocks go. Gives us that strength that we've accomplished with this build using all the Kryptonite products, and accompanies that with all the ride quality and benefits you get from the valving.
So let's transition towards the rear car a little bit here. First thing I noticed on the side is the charging ports. Those are kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the custom little trinkets that we put on this car. From the factory, the batteries come under the seats. The seats are easy to get out from factory, but once you do the PRP harnesses and the PRP seats, they're actually fixed mounted in the car. So it's a little bit harder to get to the batteries. So one of the things we do is we add the charge ports on the back so that you can clip on, jump the car, charge the car, whatever you need to do without having to access those batteries under the seats.
I like that. Anything that can cut down on like pre-ride time and post-ride time, it's always a win in my book. So running bigger wheels and tires, they can cause a lot of havoc on stock parts. One of them being the toe links. Now, we've got our toe links on there. They're better, obviously. They're adjustable. Tell me about what's gonna really make a difference on ours.
So the biggest thing with the toe links from factory is we see tons of cars in the shop, and the first thing we notice is the rear end alignment is off. Lots of things that can cause. It can cause the car to react wrong when you're putting in steering input, whether you're out sliding around in the desert or in the sand trying to corner the thing. It will actually counteract with the input you're putting into the car. The cam adjusters are the biggest problem from factory, and then when you add in these bigger tires, heavier tires, it's compounded on that to where it makes it even worse. So with going with the Kryptonite toe links, you are ditching the cam adjuster, going to much stronger materials, Heim joint in the front. Once we align these things and they're set to zero where they need to be, we don't have to touch them, don't have to mess with them again.
That's awesome. That's great peace of mind, especially when you're jamming out in the desert. So you may be wondering how Kryptonite got into making parts for UTVs. Kryptonite's history with 3/4 and 1-ton trucks lends itself very well to the side-by-side market. Not only are we beating these trucks hard, but these side-by-sides, they get absolutely ripped on because that's what they're built for, and we like doing it. So being able to apply that technology from heavy-duty trucks to side-by-sides lends itself very well. A little bit of race inspiration makes for a very high-quality product made right here in the USA.
Absolutely, and it just makes sense. If you're running all the Kryptonite products on your truck, run them on your side-by-side, all that technology that they've learned over the last 10 years, from the heavy truck market, putting it into the side-by-sides just makes sense.
On the back of our Pro R, we've got our Kryptonite radius rods, our Kryptonite radius plate, and our sway bar end links. This helps keep the back end under control, along with the toe links, which we talked about earlier. What else do you guys do to the back of this?
So being that we already upgraded a ton of the front end components, we added that same strength to the back with the Kryptonite radius rods, like you said, with the sway bar end links.
So we've got our rear radius rods on this car, and not only are they high clearance, but they're made out of much better materials, because the stock ones, I've seen them, they don't look very strong.
Yeah, they're constructed out of thin wall steel. They are stronger over some of the older model cars, but with these ones, they're solid built aluminum construction. The top link does give you some adjustability, so you can really tune it in based off of your suspension, if it's aftermarket, stock, and then gives you tons of strength.
Yeah, combine that with the toe link, and you have that rear dialed. So tying the radius rods into the frame, we've got our radius plate on the back, which is a very nice unit. The stock ones, like stamped steel, doesn't do too much for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just stamped steel, serves a purpose from factory, but with everything else that's been upgraded on this car, with the radius rods being much stronger, you're going to move your weak point to a different position, and that's going to be your radius plate. Replacing it with that almost half-inch thick billet piece is going to just give you one less thing you have to worry about, and it gives us an awesome point to tie in our spare tire carrier.
One of my biggest pet peeves about side-by-sides is when I see people with flimsy spare tire carriers. I can't tell you how much that boils my blood.
We went ahead and did a custom tire carrier off the back. A couple cool features about it. It actually houses a spare Kryptonite wheel bearing that actually fastens the tire on the car. So there's no need for tire straps or anything like that. Nothing's going to come loose, and you have the benefit of a spare bearing if you ever need it.
That is really cool, especially not having to strap it down, going fast. That means one less thing to break, and you have spare parts. Always a good thing.
We're able to hang the spare tire off the rear of the car, get some weight distribution pushed off the back of the car, so where it's going to give you some better ride quality and stability paired with that MTS suspension. Also frees up a ton of bed space and gives you complete visibility out of the back of the car.
Yeah, because the backup cameras on here are like really good, right?
Yeah, they're actually 1P.
The stock rear sway bar air links on this Pro R were actually very, very flimsy. It kind of looks like a straw. So putting our nice, much, much stronger sway bar links on there, it's going to help mitigate the body roll and make sure that they don't get ripped off in a manzanita bush, because that's not a good day.
Absolutely. Being that they're constructed out of 1-inch hex aluminum, just like a lot of the other Kryptonite parts, so much stronger. One less thing to worry about. A super, super tough part.
So let's also talk about the rear light here. Why do you want to run a rear light?
So the big thing with the rear light is 99% of the time you're going to be in dusty conditions. Like this car is going to live out in the desert. So one of the big things that we've touched on a bunch talking about this build is safety. So driving back late at night, you might have the sun in your eyes, it might be dusty. You always have a buddy in front of you. It's good to have some visibility with those brake lights in the rear light bar, and you also have flashing ambers that are all adjustable on the dash with just a simple switch. Rear light bar does a great job of giving you that safety and visibility in the dusty conditions.
Now let's also talk about these whips. I see them everywhere, but why does everybody want to run whips?
So with the whips, the way it started out, it used to just be a simple fiberglass flag pole basically when you're out in the dunes, gives you some safety. That way it's sitting up above the car, so if you're coming over a dune or someone else is coming over a dune, they see the flags first and kind of gives you a heads up that someone's on the other side of the dune. Now it's kind of more of a trinket feature that we can throw on. You know, they make different colors, different lengths, different sizes, stuff like that. At this point, it's just another item that we can throw on the cars to kind of give it some more flair.
The goal for this vehicle was really a whole lot of reliability, durability, and longevity. You may notice that we've done a lot of stuff to the suspension, but not so much the motor or the brakes. Tell me more about that.
So the whole goal with this build is reliability. This thing's gonna spend a ton of miles out in the Nevada desert, so we haven't touched the motor, we haven't done an exhaust, we haven't done anything to the drivetrain. These cars are super solid from stock, so it's not necessary. Keep that reliability up and keep it to where our miles per mile is maximized.
Absolutely, it's definitely one thing Polaris did get right on this car.
The last car we built in 2022 put almost 10,000 miles on it. With this car, we're gonna go even further.
We're gonna move on to one of my favorite parts of this entire car. There's a lot of little things done to make this work just the way we want it to. It's the interior. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. Personally, my favorite is obviously the Kryptonite shifter. We've taken care of that issue with the cable, with the roller bearing in there. It's very nice. However, there's a lot of other little things that you've done to make this really cool on the inside.
Absolutely. The factory interior is already pretty nice. We've done tons of things from a stereo upgrade, which gives us some awesome door handles and speakers incorporated into the factory doors. We've done some accessory lighting in the car that have really kind of given it that one-off custom touch.
And a lot of good control with this little switch panel down at the bottom, right?
Absolutely. Switch Pro makes everything super easy to get wired in. It gives you low voltage indicators, and it gives you just that one touch push button for all of your accessories. It's programmable. It's an awesome unit.
Now, I've noticed that there's some different seats in there. What are those?
So you got to have some comfort in these things. PRP is our go-to on every single build we do. We go with their PRP RST seats for this particular model of car. We threw some heaters in there, so it's got a high and low heater that's all ran on the Switch Pro. So it gives you that comfort, especially this time of year.
You've got some bags on the back of those seats too, right?
Yeah, storage is always an issue on these cars. The biggest thing with it is storage. You can never have enough of it. One thing with the stereo kit, we do lose some of the space that you could typically take up with a door bag. So we did add these storage bags in the back of the PRP seats, which is an awesome feature that they offer.
Now, next, I do see that there's some, is that insulation? What do you got going on there as far as the paneling?
So the paneling on the roof is actually a boat decking. What it helps with is some of the sound deadening, keeps that tinny noise out of some of the roof panels. It also helps with some of the harmonics on this car. These cars are super high RPM, which can get pretty annoying on long day rides. That helps with some of the harmonics in the car actually too.
Yeah, the color actually matches like just about perfectly too. I really like it. One of the really cool things that Chris did over here is we've got some ventilation going on for the interior, right?
Absolutely. So on these cars, the designers added in some creature comforts for the driver compartment. What there is they're actually forced air ducts here just in the front of the hood. And we've actually added two 3-inch brushless fans that are ducted into the factory ducting. Nice little push button on the dash, pulls in a ton of air for those hot summer days, keep you nice and cool.
Absolutely. Now we've also got some more interior lighting in there. What do you got going on there?
So again, for all of our lighting, we go to Baja Designs. Cannot beat the design, the light output on these lights, and the longevity of them. They're super reliable, work every time you need them. So we did almost 12 map lights and rock lights on this car. We actually 3D designed and 3D printed a dual Baja Designs map light mount that's fixed to the tube in the center of the car. Gives you tons of light for those night rides.
Yeah, very nice, clean install. So on the interior, you've also got really nice rearview mirrors mounted up top.
The Axia alloy makes an awesome product, so we did their 12-inch convex mirrors for both driver and passenger, since we have so much rear view space.
Now we've also got, to make this thing a little bit more nice on the road, if you will, we got blinkers on there too, right?
Yep. Being that this thing is going to live out in the Nevada desert, it was huge to do the blinker kit, makes it completely street legal. One of my favorite features about this car is the handmade roof scoop. It encompasses all of our design and a kind of a flair we put into a lot of these cars. And I might be a little bit partial because I did build it myself, but I think it looks pretty sweet.
I agree. The aesthetic on there is top notch. My favorite part of this car is going to be two things, the ball joints and the shock forks. Mainly because if you have a ball joint failure, chances are shock fork's going to go along with it, and that's a really bad day, but also just a shock fork in general. Why they are breaking at the threads, like someone in the OEM world should have been able to figure that out and not put that out there. So the fact that we were able to come up with something to mitigate that and stop that from happening, that's hands down my favorite part. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. I've really enjoyed this build, especially with the guys here at Alpine Designs. I can't wait to get this thing out in the desert and rip with it. One of my favorite things about Kryptonite Parts is we do have a lifetime warranty. Race it, wreck it, use it hard. That's how we plan for it to be used, and that's why we build it the way we do. If you want to have your car built like this, definitely check out Alpine Designs. They're down here in Diamond Springs. I cannot, again, wait to get this thing out and ripping. Chris, appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been an awesome build. Great way to start off the year.